Week 1 of the 2023 NFL season is over. The carnage has happened. We've dealt with it. The injuries, the underperformances, and everything is over. And we are on to week 2. Now it's time to figure out what players are looking up, what players are looking down, who maybe we should be excited for, who we shouldn't be excited for, buy low, sell high, all that stuff. Week 2, fantasy football, and of course, best ball here on Spike Week Sickos. Let's do it. So, Rob, have you officially, wrapped your head around everything that happened in week 1, especially after last night's? What a great ending to week 1, by the way. I don't mean it with Aaron Rodgers. That's obviously a terrible, terrible ending for whatever people feel about Aaron Rodgers. I didn't want to see that. Nobody wanted to see that. I did think it was going to be really awesome for the NFL if he was on the Jets and making them which I think he was going to make them a really good and competitive team. And I have my Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson bags packed, so it's certainly not awesome that Aaron Rodgers is not there. But fun game. I mean, amazingly fun game. Brutal for the old Bills. Bills fans cannot be feeling awesome about everything. We don't need to dive too deeply into Monday Night Football, and we don't need to talk too much about Aaron Rodgers. I'm sure everybody has talked about Aaron Rodgers ad nauseum. Yeah, the Bills suck. It is pretty sad to lose to Zach Wilson and the Jets. But have you come to grips with everything that happened in week 1 and ready to move on to week 2?
So heading on last night's game first, I do think the Bills. So let's start with this. The Jets defense is going to be legit the entire year. That defense is going to be really, really good, and they're going to make people look bad. We were talking about this in Discord last night, but I still think that the Bills are just going to be, I don't want to say bottom of the pack because that's not what I think, but I don't think the Bills offense is going to be anything near the level of great that some people thought they were going to be. I think we saw that with Josh Allen last night. He is who he is, kind of. He had one really, really good season, but this dude kind of melts down quite a bit, it feels like. I mean, maybe I'm projecting because I don't care for the Bills offense too much. I made that a point over the summer, but it seems we're getting the same old with the Bills. Now, I think they have an absolute crush spot this week with the Raiders.
Oh yeah.
So
Yes.
So that's all gonna just turn around, and I understand that people are gonna try to shove that in my face, but I think they're gonna crush the Raiders this week. But I think overall they're just gonna be like a fledgling offense where they have some up weeks, but they're gonna be as many down weeks as up weeks, it feels like. And that brings us kind of to the entire NFL. And we hit on this a little bit last night, but kind of felt like almost every offense was like that over this past week. And are we worried about that going forward for the whole year? I mean, we go to week 1, the Chiefs lose, the Bengals lose, the Bills lose. That is the cream of the crop, supposedly, in the AFC. Good for the Chiefs that all the teams that they're really worried about lose as well. Also, the Chargers lose. So it's it's an interesting conference, and that's kind of what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Is offense going to be bad? Is it the way that teams are working out in the summer now? Do they need these extra few weeks to get in gear? That's kind of the concern going forward for me, is what our offense is actually going to look like.
Yeah. So two thoughts on that. First on the Bills. Still obviously going to be an upper echelon offense across the NFL, right? The Cardinals aren't going to be able to match what the Bills can do on offense. Nobody is saying that. Even with what the Rams did on Sunday, the Rams are not going to be as good of an offense as the Bills will be this year. But I think the matchup was brutal with the Jets. Like you said, the Jets are going to make a lot of good teams look. The Dolphins just had 17,000 yards on Sunday against the Chargers. The Jets are probably going to make the Dolphins look not awesome when they play them. But what I think the Bills did, I think, just my take, we'll see how this plays out over the course of the next 17 weeks. But I'm sure, and everyone probably watching remembers over the course of the summer, if you've been playing best ball or whatever, the great 12 personnel debate. The summer of 23 11.5 personnel debate, whatever you want to call it. They decided, so people that said they're going to play both of these tight ends, right? They're going to play, right? So for anyone not familiar, 12 personnel means, my dogs are singing upstairs, but 12 personnel meaning one running back and two tight ends are on the field, right? And so depending upon how many tight ends and running backs you have, that's how many wide receivers you have on the field. So they decided to play both of their tight ends the majority of snaps. So people said, see, you could take that victory lap and say, see, I told you they were going to run. And also 11, let's not call it 11.5 personnel. It's fucking 12. Dalton Kincaid is a tight end. Let's not make up fake things to make it sound cooler. That's like the thing going around in fantasy Twitter today was the pick'em stuff and the prize pick stuff is DFS plus. Like, stop it. It's they're player. It's prop. It's a prop parlay. It's sports betting. We just found a loophole in the system. It's not DFS plus, whatever the fuck that means. So anyway, it's 12 personnel. They ran it a ton. And guess what happens when you run lots of 12 personnel? You have a very unexplosive offense. When you have Gabe Davis, who never gets open, right? He's a down the field flyer. Stephon Diggs is amazing, and he proved to be amazing last against that defense to do what Stephon Diggs did. He's still really good at the game. And then you have two tight ends who clearly, they're not going to be stretching the field. I don't really understand how you thought that was going to, you're going to beat the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Dolphins and all that with two tight ends the whole time. It'd be one thing if you had Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews. I'd be like, okay, go for it. Those guys are amazing. Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid, that's your answer to solving NFL defenses. I think the Bills misjudged this whole thing. I also think over the course of the season, they're going to move away. You can't do this. You can't. This is not how you can win. This is not winning football. It's the opposite. They're trying. I think it was the little fancy play syndrome where they're trying to solve the great too high. Everybody's running too high safeties and nobody can score, right? No big plays or whatever. They're trying to solve that issue with the underneath tight end guys. That's not the answer. The answer, look what the Dolphins did. You want to see how you solve too high safeties? Have a bunch of fucking speed and playmakers and stretch the defense.
Stretch the defense, both the safeties to each corner of the field and hit them in the middle. It's the easiest. People act like two high safeties is hard to beat. It's
two high safeties have been around for the history of football. Two high safeties is not new. Now, some of the ways that they're deploying defenses, of course, are a little bit new. And of course, not everyone has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So I'm not saying that everyone can do this, but how you do this is stretching the defense, right? Why did Durham Smythe have 60 yards? Why did River Craycraft have 50 yards and a touchdown? It's because you're stretching the defense both horizontally and vertically, and then these other guys can succeed. You don't just dink and dunk your way against it. And so I think the Bills misjudged it a little bit, and I think eventually, we're going to get, whether it's Deontay Hardy which we did see, Deontay Hardy looked pretty good last night. I feel like they should have played more of him, or Khalil Shakir or whatever, Justin Shorter. I think the Bills will pivot back to a little bit more natural, normal spread offense. But that was my big takeaway really from last night. Not Rodgers, Brees. We don't got to get into that. But the Bills plan, kind of like we talked about last night with the Ravens plan, felt awkward and uncomfortable, and nobody looked like they really kind of felt comfortable. That's what I felt about the Bills. And it was because they literally had Dawson Knox and Kincaid out there the whole time. And it's what did you expect? Those guys can't get open against good defenders. So it didn't go well. And then to your point, I think it is a little bit of early in the season, these defenses they don't have an edge because a defense with the rules of the NFL, the defense never has the edge. It's all skewed towards the offense. But if there was ever a time when the defense had the edge, look over the summer, there's only so many practices you can have. There's only so many padded practices you can have. Half these guys sit out every other practice during training camp, right? Kadarius Toney never fucking played all summer. J.K. Dobbins never played all summer, right? Mark Andrews never played. There's so many of these guys that are just we get to week 1 and they've practiced with their quarterback like 8 times. It's like, so naturally that creates some issues. I think it'll change a little bit over the summer, but I do think, offenses are having a small adjustment period in the NFL where defense, we had a really huge scoring boom when the offenses kind of went a little more college style spread, air raid styles, came in vogue in the NFL and a lot of really cool route concepts and stuff. And the defenses have adjusted. Now they haven't solved anything, but offenses now have to kind of punch back. And I think they will. They definitely will. I also think the elite offenses in particular had like a lot of turnover and chaos, right? The Chiefs, like the wide receiver room, they still don't know what they got in their wide receiver room, and they lost Travis Kelce in week 1. The Ravens had a new offensive coordinator, basically 3 new wide receivers because Bateman has barely played for him, and they lost Mark Andrews in week 1, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not super worried about all those offenses, but it does create a pretty fun little dynamic. Burrow didn't play all summer and then was in a fucking monsoon against a good defense. And like, I'm mostly writing all of that stuff off, but it will be fascinating to kind of follow over the next, month or 2.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of like just see the evolution of the offenses for all those reasons, especially like how many teams are just adjusting to new coaching, which we hit on last night and everything. So,
shout out, Fractal. Thank you. You're welcome. I played safety. If you want to know about playing,
I also played safety.
We played in college. I was a safety, and we played too high. Literally every snap, basically, we played too high. So that's my baby. That's my thing. And in high school, when I coached, we played too high safeties, and like I said, and that was I'm 35 years old. This was damn near 20 years ago. So like it's been around. This isn't new. The 2 high safeties is not new. People have been doing it for a long time. Let's run down the comments really quick. I want to catch up on these before we start to dive into week 2. I like to appease the viewers. Normally we're not doing, trade, start, sit, waiver wires or whatever. But Ventro asks about, the Broncos wide receivers. He has both Sutton and Judy and Devonta Smith. Should you trade both? Should I keep both or trade one? And if so, which Broncos wide receiver should I trade? That's actually kind of interesting because it's like who are you most bullish on moving forward, right? Between the 2 Broncos wide receivers. And you talked a little bit about Sutton last night on the show. Would you rather it's tricky because Judy, you paid more for Judy and you're probably selling a little bit low, but are you still most bullish on kind of Sutton right now? Or what are you thinking?
I still like Sutton the best out of all the receivers over in Denver. I mean, like a question like this is always tough to answer because I don't know what your league settings are. I don't know how many wide receivers you can start. I don't know if you're doing full point PPR. I don't know what you're going to get for a return on Judy right now with people knowing that he's got the injury and people scared. I mean, like in a vacuum, sure, I would probably trade one if you don't want to have both Broncos wide receivers, but why'd you put yourself in that spot in the first place anyway?
If you didn't want both of them, don't draft both of them. Yeah.
That's kind of where I go with that stuff. So if I could trade Judy for something decent, I would trade Judy for something decent, but I don't know what you're going to get for him.
I think I'd trade Sutton just because of that dynamic. He scored the touchdown last week. He was the guy that people probably are like, ooh, maybe it's a Sutton year, when you thought it was Judy all along. He just didn't play week 1. So this is actually a kind of interesting one. I know our guy, Hacker, the wizard developer of all of the Spike Week tools, has been drafting Mike Evans, kind of not necessarily this thesis to the Bills specifically, but that Mike Evans could be a good pick on the Bucks regardless. And he did have a good, reasonably good week 1, but also that if the Bucks are not great, he could get traded, right? And they did not land on a contract extension for Mike Evans in Tampa, which does open him up to be a better trade candidate because the team wouldn't have to take on a big contract if they trade for him. I don't know that the Bills should trade for Mike Evans just because it's an awkward fit. Gabe can only play on the outside. He is a one-trick pony. Like I love Gabe Davis, but he is a one-trick pony. Stephon Diggs can of course move around, but Evans also is kind of like fancy Gabe Davis. I don't think you want him, Diggs, and Gabe. It's an awkward fit basically. So I don't know that improves things. But, I mean, if Stephon Diggs wants to move inside full-time, I mean, he would fucking eat in the slot for the Bills. And if Diggs would be okay with that, or just like they could, change their offense around a little bit, Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs, and Gabe Davis would be fucking incredible with Josh Allen for sure.
But Eric, how would they play 11.5 personnel if they made that trade for Mike Evans?
RIP to 11.5. DFS Plus would be over if Mike Evans got traded to the Bills. Yeah, this is funny. Did you see the Mookie Betts DFS Plus boost on Underdog? God, that was so funny. This is actually true. TJ says the 12 personnel hasn't worked since Gronk and Hernandez. People have been trying to recreate this Gronk and Hernandez thing for forever. Like Aaron Hernandez hasn't even been alive since like people have been trying to recreate this for so long. Stop. It's not a thing. Those two guys were fucking unicorns, and they were they were like probably the two best.
Who was the quarterback there too?
Yeah, they also happen to have the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest, coach of all time. Like, shocker that Sean McDermott can't recreate Gronk and Hernandez with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Let's see here. Johnny Football says, shout out Johnny. He's around here a bunch. We appreciate you hanging out with us. Are we talking best ball like this every week? You know it. We're not going anywhere. I mentioned this last night, but just to reiterate for everybody watching right now, last night's show, Monday Night Best Ball, and tonight's show, Spike Week Sickos on Tuesday, they're not going anywhere. 365 days a year, every Monday and Tuesday, Rob and I will be here hanging out, talking best ball, talking the results of the games, talking, the ramifications for best ball, and of course, fantasy football in general. And then we're working on everything else that we have. NBA is coming, MLB playoff best ball is coming. Soon we'll have in-season NFL best ball. There will be more, but probably for these first couple of weeks, it will just be mostly the Monday and Tuesday shows. And then we'll be back several days a week for you once the action really starts to pick up. Let's see here. It's funny. I just want to, while we're talking, reminiscing, whatever. He says, no, is that, how would you, is this dial or delay? How do you say this name?
I guess delay.
We're gonna
there's
go
no accent,
delay.
So dial could work as well.
Yes,
so
but I don't know. So you have to tell us how you say your name in the chat, because I honestly have no idea how to pronounce this. But we'll go delay because it sounds funnier.
Yeah.
No zero blitzes, or would you have gotten burned? It's really funny you say this. When I first got to college, we ran like a 0-man straight fucking blitz every goddamn snap. Press man, like I was a press man corner when I got to college. And then we got a new defensive coordinator and went to a normal fucking defense, not a goddamn psychopath 0-man blitz defense every single time. But yeah, dilly. What? That doesn't make any sense. Just make it dilly. If it's supposed to be dilly, spell it dilly. That's not dilly. That's
dogs
dial.
Pissed. Great job.
The dogs are mad.
Dilly.
Yeah, fucking dilly. Week 2. Let's get into week 2. We've messed around enough.
Come for the safety talk. Stay to get roasted for your name.
Yes, exactly. Spike Week. Yeah, that's what we do here. The first thing I want to talk about, especially because it hits home with you probably the most, is the elite quarterbacks heading into week 2. The elite quarterbacks, I don't want to say couldn't have been more of a disaster in week 1, but it's pretty close. It was pretty close to couldn't have been more of a disaster. Mahomes kept you afloat with his score. Josh Allen was a disaster. Jalen Hurts was close to a disaster. Lamar Jackson was absolutely a disaster. It wasn't great, right? Justin Fields wasn't good. Joe Burrow was truly a disaster. It was really bad across the elite quarterback front. Week 2, almost basically all of those guys have much better matchups. And so I fully expect bounce backs from basically all of those guys. Of course, Lamar and Mahomes should get back Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, which will be massive. But one thing I do think is at least mildly interesting or concerning, depending upon your viewpoint of the elite quarterbacks, is that part of the reason why you draft the elite quarterbacks is this sort of matchup proofness. The like you're paying a second or a third round price on, right? When I was drafting Lamar, the thesis is that, okay, even when he's in a bad matchup, I'm going to get 15 or 18 or whatever. And like it's not the bad Lamar game is 16 fantasy points, right? The bad Jimmy G game is 1 fantasy point. The bad Lamar game is supposed to be 16 fantasy points or whatever. And that was not what happened in week 1 with any of these guys. And so I do think it's at least reasonable to point out that, like, oh man, the thesis of them is not only that their ceilings are higher, because they are. And I think we're probably going to see that this week in week 2. But it's also a floor-based argument. Like if I'm only paying for those big spikes, it's not adding as many points, right? The reason why they add so many more points than the other quarterbacks is because they're getting you 15 at least every single week, and then they're giving you 40 in their big games. If they're not giving you 15 in their bad games, the guys who are that, you pair 3 cheap guys, you are getting 15 or plus every single week, and it kind of offsets it. So have you had any thoughts about the elite guys, or are you just kind of writing off, a little bit of variance in week 1?
I think that the Lamar one especially is like gigantic variance just based on the way that game script played out.
Yeah.
I think you just throw that Lamar game completely out the window. The thing that killed me the most is after the Mahomes game, I saw a take that it's like, Mahomes is not a top 5 quarterback. You can't like, in terms of fantasy, they were saying like he's not a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And I'm like, he just had like a mediocre Mahomes game and scored 20 essentially. And there's the thesis you're talking about. The mediocre Mahomes game was 20 points this year. He'll probably have a game where he scores less. He'll probably do a 15-point game or something like that. But his offense is different than all the other ones. Again, the Lamar thing I think was low. I think the Eagles one with Hurts, kind of, you are still playing, as much as I like to shit on Belichick now, he is one of the better defensive minded coaches, and
they have a good defense.
They had a month or two to scheme for that game. And also the Eagles had INT return for a touchdown, which always messes up your offense, like in terms of scoring for the most part. So I think there was a lot of outliers this week. Again, Josh Allen, I'm shitting on Josh Allen. I think he makes a ton of mistakes, but they played against the Jets, who are a really, really good defense. So I'm looking at it as an outlier. I'm fine with it. And it actually like kind of helps my thesis out a little bit, because every single elite quarterback kind of quote unquote failed. But all of these lower end quarterbacks, nobody still put up an elite game. There wasn't an elite game. So the catch up room for these quarterbacks from a best ball perspective is super easy. It's 1 game. It's 2 games, like at most. And Lamar can catch up. Lamar can put up 35 next week, right? Josh Allen against the Raiders could put up 35 next week.
He probably will.
And he's already caught back up to, Sam Howell, Anthony Richardson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not worried about it. If the offenses continue, if this trend continues, then you get worried about it. But for now, I have no concern, because if you had one of these guys, if Anthony Richardson or Sam Howell, who I have a lot of too, but like just say one of these lower end guys went out there,
Jordan Love
had a 35-point game, and then I'd be a little more scared, and I'd want to see what's going to happen there, because there's a lot of ground to make up at that point. It's week 1. I think that the elite quarterbacks are going to be just fine. I mean, if you're worried about any of them, it's Burrow, but I'm not even really worried about Burrow right now.
I think I'm not worried about, again, I want to keep reiterating that the Bills are going to crush this week, so I'm not worried about them this week. I do think if the Bills don't figure this shit out, like we talked about at the top, I know I'm getting my hand in the dirt and being a boomer or whatever, but I do think schematically it's not easy for unless he's supposed to run less this year. He didn't run less in week 1. Also, he has got to learn how to run safely.
He never will.
The fucking 3rd and 15 run where you're 10 yards still from the first down and you're trying to jump over a defender is the stupidest shit I've ever seen in my entire slide, buddy. like he has to learn how to slide.
He won't.
I
He's
don't
Cam,
believe
he's Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Like they're this was my argument last year. Like Josh Allen has the shortest window of all these quarterbacks because of his play style that he will not adjust. He doesn't learn anything, to be completely honest. If you look at the way he plays, he still throws really dumb passes that get intercepted. He has not learned how to throw the ball away. Like he just doesn't learn this shit. And specifically the running is why he's going to have only 5 more years in the league or something like that. He's only going to have like a 10-year usable career, and then it's just going to go away. Just like you remember Cam Newton's fall off? Because it was quick. It was a quick fall off, and I think you're going to have the same thing with Josh Allen.
And last hand in the dirt take, but I was so triggered last night. There was one specific play where every time Allen gets pressure, he does the high school quarterback or the college quarterback thing and puts his head down and tries to run, right? So there's a free rusher or something like that off of the edge. The best quarterbacks of all time, Rodgers, Brady, Manning, etc. When you see that free rusher, you always have a hot read, right? So like in most plays, you have and in this specific one, they did. Everybody's running a route. I think it was, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Hardy or whatever. Anyway, the Jets bring the house. They have a bunch of downfield routes, but so that blitzer left a hot read wide open 3 yards down the line, past the line of scrimmage. When there is a free runner and a blitz coming, literally your instinct as the quarterback is supposed to be, oh shit, he's unaccounted for. I'm not supposed to run up the middle because there's a bunch of guys there. I'm not going to escape there. Just quick, boom, immediate. Once you sense the free runner, you just check it down to your hot read. And like, either you just take your 4 yards and you move on to the next play and be like that's why Aaron Rodgers actually has been so good. That's why Tom Brady was so good. Tom Brady was the
best at it.
Tom Brady, like, say whatever we want about Tom Brady. I actually believe the reason why he was probably unquestionably the GOAT was because they would design a play, right? Randy Moss down the field, not open. Mike Evans down the field, not open. Boom, check it down. Every single time I'm getting my 4 yards, we're going to stay ahead of the chains. We're going to keep shit moving, and we're going to just keep moving the ball down the field. Josh Allen never does that, dude.
Never.
He takes the home run shot, or he holds the ball, or he takes off and runs when the pressure starts coming. And it's like, I know those are like really ticky-tack things, and he's an awesome football player. I mean, he's an awesome football player. But there's those little things. I'm just like, God damn it, man. Like once you see the free runner comes, that means there's somebody open. Like that the whole reason why he's free is because there's someone else out there, right? Yeah. You have 11 guys and they have 11 guys. If he's free, someone is open. So little shit that just annoyed me with Josh Allen that I've like combined that.
I don't think he knows how to read it. I don't think he knows how to do a proper pre-snap read. Like a Manning, a Brady, a Mahomes is really good at it. They understand that guy could be that free rusher, right? And they know
Burrow is not that talented. Like pure, like God gift. Like Josh Allen can throw the ball 100 yards and is fucking huge and can run and is a tank, whatever. Like Cam Newton, right? He's modern day Cam Newton. Burrow like doesn't have that strong of an arm. He's an okay athlete, but not anything special. But he gets up there and they're like, looks like they're bringing a blitz and they're single covering Jamar Chase. Guess where this ball's going? Yeah, Josh Allen never fucking does that. Like he never just walks up and goes, blitz. I got Stephon Diggs or Gabe Davis. Let's just throw it to them. Like even like the Zach Wilson throw to Garrett Wilson at the goal line was just like, I know it was called, but it's like, just throw it to my dude. Let him make a play. Yeah. And guess what? Guess what? Garrett Wilson made one of the sickest catches of all time. Anyway, enough about Josh Allen and the quarterbacks. I also think we made the thing about the elite quarterbacks pretty clear. It was a good comment in the chat though. Matt says Mahomes looked awesome. I agree.
I agree too.
Mahomes, they lost and the box score wasn't amazing, but Mahomes played his ass off. I thought he was great. I thought he looked like a quarterback whose receivers let him down and he didn't have his Hall of Fame best skill player, right? Like that's what happens when you don't have Travis Kelce.
How many drops were there? 5, 6, 7 drops in that second
Tony
half?
had 4. Sky had 1.
This guy had more than one, right? He had
Maybe
at
least one. Richie James had one. It was bad. It was really the receivers were horrible. Were truly horrible. On that note, which we'll get to more of this week 2 stuff. Feeling I would feel good, and I know you got big bags packed. I would feel good about Rashee Rice moving forward for the Chiefs. Not just because he caught the touchdown, but because he was the only guy I felt throughout the course of the game was consistently creating separation, consistently looking like a dude out there. Like, look, I got big Richie James bags because I thought like he might be the guy. What happened on Thursday was what I envisioned for why I was drafting Richie James. I was like, Sky sucks, Tony sucks, none of MVS is MVS.
Yeah, he's a one sprinter.
Right. Richie James is going to be the guy that's like, okay, I'm going to get open underneath for Patrick Mahomes. And he didn't do shit. He was horrible. So I'm like, somebody's got to do something. And I thought Rashee Rice definitely looked the best and can continue to improve over the course of the season. I'd be really bullish on Rashee Rice.
I think that he is going. I think we said this last week after the game. I don't remember. I remember talking about it. Rice is taking that Sky Moore job, and it's going to be sooner rather than later, especially after that game. Everyone was like focusing on Kadarius Toney and what happened with Kadarius Toney. Sky Moore is the one that is going to get phased out more. In my opinion,
Tony got open. At least Tony got open. I mean, it was gross and he played bad. Look, I'm not going to sit here and even cope for Tony. That was fucking pathetic. But he got open. Like, he dropped the ball, but I mean, he ran like 12 routes and got 5 or 6 targets. Like, he was getting open and they were trying to get him the ball. He just failed miserably. Sky Moore never got open. So like, Tony will keep getting shots as long as he gets open. But if you don't get open, that's when you lose your job.
Yeah, and Rice looked good when he was on the field making plays. So I feel really good about the Rice stuff going forward, to be honest. Tony will get another chance. I'm not saying he's going to be great or anything, but there's potential still with Tony. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pump the Tony bags. I think Rice is the guy we need to be focusing on going forward.
I will have a non-zero amount of Kadarius Toney DFS lineups this week. That's all I'm going to say. We'll leave it at that.
I'm sorry, it's MVS week.
That game is. I will also have a non-zero amount of MVS lineups. in DFS, I will have a very much non-zero amount of Rashee Rice lineups in DFS this week as well. But that game will be very fun. And if you want to talk about buy low on Kadarius Toney, you can't think of a better spot. And sometimes I like the Twitter clout as much as I like the money. And if Kadarius Toney catches 2 touchdowns this week to dunk on everybody when he's 1% or whatever would be very fun. Thursday night. Let's talk about Thursday night really quickly. Eagles, fresh off of a pretty disappointing game against the Patriots. We talked about that one a little bit already. Jump out 16-0 and kind of just like, put it in neutral all the way home and don't really do a whole lot and let the Patriots almost come back and win that game. They were Keyshawn Boutte toe tap away from a first and goal, or close to a first and goal with like a minute left, down 5 for the Patriots. Of course, he did not get the second foot down and they lost, but pretty bad performance from the Eagles. And of course, they play the Vikings on Thursday, who also had a very bad performance, losing to the Fighting Baker Mayfields. Did you see the clip of Baker Mayfield when he ran ran over Byron Murphy, the corner for the Minnesota Vikings, formerly of the Arizona Cardinals? He said, they run zone read and Baker keeps a zone read. Like, the motherfucker thinks it's still college. Like, buddy, you just hand the ball off. You're not supposed to be running to the outside. But he starts to get the edge, and Byron Murphy, as the corner, is there and comes up to tackle him. And Baker goes to stiff arm him and does like kind of stiff arm him and like kind of runs him over. Murphy took him down, but Baker like got like 4 or 5 extra yards as he just like ran Murphy over. And he was mic'd up. And they got him on the mic as Murphy was tackling. He's going, get your weight up, while Murphy was tackling him. And then he's like all jacked up, running back to the huddle. And like, it was awesome. But the Bucks beat the Vikings. Now, an interesting spot for the Vikings, probably going to go to 0-2, but I do think the Eagles defense showed a little bit of warts in week 1 that some people saw coming, where they were amazing last year, also with the soft schedule, but they were really talented last year, still talented, but lost a lot of pieces, and showed maybe losing those pieces is going to make them a little more open to, right, why I'm not worried about Jalen Hurts is
Right.
the defense is probably worse. So he's going to play a lot more 4-quarter games as opposed to 2 or 3-quarter games. And I think Thursday will be one of them where Cousins, Jefferson, and co are going to push them a little bit. And Hurts is probably going to light the Vikings up.
Yeah, the only problem is the short week thing. We never like short weeks for these types of games. But I agree. I kind of wish this was on the main slate. I was back and forth with this today thinking about this game. I'm like, shit, I wish this was on the main slate because I want to play Jalen Hurts. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, you wouldn't be able to play Jalen Hurts because everybody's going to play Jalen Hurts if that was on the main slate. So, no, it's going to be a fun game. I mean, I like football because of the Eagles, so I'm obviously always going to watch an Eagles game. Not really a fan of teams as much anymore, but Jefferson, AJ Brown on the field, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this game, see how they overcome. I do think the Eagles are going to win by double digits in this particular game, but Minnesota is going to try to push them for a little bit at least. And to your point, I already think that Jefferson's going to set the receiving yards record. So it's going to be another 140, 150 yard game for Justin Jefferson.
And they're going to have to throw. They can't run. Yeah. It's tough to run on the Eagles as it is. And Alexander Madison ain't going to be the one that breaks that mold. So Thursday, feel really good about Hurts. I think it's actually a pretty good bounce back spot for Goddard as well. Patriots really locked him up, and he goose egged. But also, like, we're going to talk about some buy low spots. I'm not yet worried about Dallas Goedert. If he doesn't do anything on Thursday, again, it'll still only be 2 weeks, but I will be a little bit concerned because last year he never went through that big of a lull at any point last year, and it's still the same target competition. So only other thing on that game is Kenny Gainwell. They didn't practice on Monday, but they had a simulated practice report or whatever, and he would not have practiced. And then today they did practice, and he did not practice with a rib injury. I'm not sure when he picked that up, but just be on the lookout for that. We'll see. We don't need to talk about the Eagles backfield again. We had a fun conversation about that yesterday. I will be interested to see if Gainwell does not play, what they do. I'm not rooting for Gainwell not to play because I got Gainwell bags too. I know you got tons of them. But I would like to see what happens if there is no Kenny Gainwell. Like, is it Boston Scott? Is Penny going to get a chance? Is it Swift? I would be interested.
You're going to hate it even more.
I think
you're going to hate. Yeah, you're going to hate it even more. This is the Swift week, though. This feels like a DeAndre Swift, where he houses some sort of 60-yard touchdown or something like that.
I think they'll figure out ways to get all three involved in fun ways against the Vikings. If there's no, like we talked about it last night. So if you want to get our Eagles running back thoughts, we spent a long time talking about it on last night's show. Go check that out on the channel. But I think against the Vikings on a short week with no Kenny Gainwell, I think you'll get some Boston Scott in like a traditional running back role. Then they'll scheme some stuff up for Swift that they didn't need to in week 1 because Gainwell could just do everything. And I do think you'll get some Penny touches, but it'll probably be just like we're all pissed about you're just mad about everything. You're mad about your Gainwell because he's not playing. You're mad about Swift because he gets 6 touches, and you're mad about Penny because he gets 4 carries. Type of a situation.
DFS SAR says, please play Swift. Where do you want me to play Swift? It's a Thursday night game.
I'm not playing Swift and Showdown. I'll tell you that right now.
I mean, do you want me to I'll play Swift and Showdown. I'll play one lineup. I'd throw a Swift in there just because he's going to be low owned. Like I'll throw one lineup with DeAndre Swift, but it's not like I'm not playing DeAndre Swift on a Sunday slate, even if it is the Minnesota game, right? Like, I don't know. Please play Swift. It's a Thursday night game. What do you want from me here? We're talking about best ball. I'll play Swift if he makes the lineup. How about that?
I'll put Swift in my best ball starting lineup. How about that one? All right, on to Sunday. We're not going to be able to hit every game, of course. We got 20 or so minutes, but we'll hit some highlights. One interesting one that has been a shootout for the past several years, that last year was like week 5, I believe it was. And then 2 years ago was in week 17, the best ball championship that won lots of people lots of money. The Seattle Seahawks go to Detroit and play the Detroit Lions. And I'm
Speaking
considering
of mic'd up, did you see that mic'd up clip?
Oh yeah.
Aaron Donald one.
Oh yeah.
Dude, that game, God.
I lost a lot of money on the second half of that game because the Seahawks are fucking incompetent, but it was a lot of fun. Everything from that game was a lot of fun. They ran 13 plays in the second half. They had 10 yards of total offense in the second half. But why did that happen? Both of their offensive tackles got hurt, and the offensive line was a somewhat of a weakness for them already. And then you lose both of your tackles. The Detroit Lions have gotten better on defense. I mean, I know the Chiefs struggled with drops and didn't have Travis Kelce, but the Lions defense showed you, I think, on Thursday night, opening night, that they've gotten a little better. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson is a bad man, and they have some talent on that defense. So the total is 47 on that game. I think people will be excited for that game, and I have. You want to talk about holding some bags? The Seahawks were one of my big stands this year that I thought they were going to be really good on offense again. And I'm not super excited for that game. I'm very, very worried. What I will say, JSN looked really good in week 1. 5 or 6 targets on 65% of the routes. Looked like you want JSN to look. The offense just stunk. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't DK Metcalf's fault. Although DK got real salty at the end of the game, came in and shoved the dude down after a play, and then got an unsportsmanlike the next play and was acting like he's way too big to act like that big of a bitch. That was a little disappointing.
Losing the grown ass man card on.
Yeah, that was a bitch ass man card type of a game for Metcalf. But that game is one that seems like it's going to be really, really awesome. But I don't know. Lions are minus 5.5, and the total's 47. I told you I'm actually considering betting the under, and I really kind of like the Lions on that one. I'll pull up some of the odds so we can run down some of these games. But that was one that stuck out to me where it's like, at first glance, you're like, oh my God, Seahawks Lions, let's go. But the more you think about it, it doesn't feel amazing.
We kind of hit on this on the offseason, though. I know you said you have a ton of Seahawks, but we said there might be just a middling, fledgling offense this year, even with bringing JSN in. That little luster that we got from Geno Smith, like in the beginning of the season, it started to lose its edge towards the end, and that could have carried over to this year. Not saying it's 100% going to, but I was always Rocky. I don't have a lot of Geno Smith this year, and I know he was getting touted a ton. My Geno bags,
and I do have a bunch. Yeah, and I do have.
I have a lot of Seattle one-offs, is what I will say. Whether it's Walker, whether it's JSN, whether it's Tyler Lockett, who, I didn't look up his injury yet, but I know there's something going on.
It was so I don't know. You know, it's going to be a concussion protocol type of thing. He got smoked in the head, which probably was just adding insult to injury at the end for the Seahawks, but. Maybe he misses this week, but I don't suspect it's a long-term thing.
As bad as Jacoby Myers got smoked?
No, not that bad.
That was bad.
You should be happy about if you took Jacoby Myers, because his role was fucking godlike, and also he looked amazing. He's a good football player. Jacoby Myers is. He also, I can't think of a better fit than Jimmy G with Jacoby. God came down and said, there's one stack you're supposed to see in football before both of these guys are done playing, and it is Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Myers. And it worked in week 1, and he obviously had a monster game, but I would be stunned if he plays this week, and I would not be surprised if he misses multiple games, because
they cannot let him play this week after that hit. I don't care how good he is. You cannot play after that.
I totally agree. At the top of the screen, you see Chargers and Titans. Feels like a pretty good bounce back spot for the Chargers, who were okay. Eckler was obviously good, but is also banged up. We'll see how he looks in practice this week. He did also split carries with, God, every time we do a show, some fucking spam bot calls me, and it triggers me, and I can't speak when it's happening, and it comes in my head, my AirPods. But the interesting thing about Austin Eckler is I wonder how much the injury was a part of this and how much was the game plan. But it was basically a 50-50 split with Austin Eckler and Josh Kelly, and Josh Kelly looked really good.
He did look good
in week 1. This is not a matchup to run against the Titans. The Titans do one thing on defense and one thing only, and that is stop the run. Mike Vrabel is not gonna lose the run game battle, but seems wheels up to me for Justin Herbert, bounce back, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, whatever. And I also think it's a pretty good spot bounce back for Ryan Tannehill was real bad in week 1. But DeAndre Hopkins, Treylon Burks, Chig played like 80% of the snap. He was basically a full-time tight end. I would feel good about my Titans so long as Ryan Tannehill remembers how to play football.
That's a big hope at this point. Another thing we were worried about, we looked at this Titans schedule in the preseason, and we know that they're like playing to win this year, but they get through the first 6, 7, 8 games and they're a bad record. I don't know if Tannehill's going to stay out there. They might have to play Levis. So, I mean,
I think they'll play
Malik. I'm worried about
I think they'll play Malik Willis. He looked good in the I think he's gotten a lot better. I think we'll have to see in if he gets into a regular season game. But I'm more bullish on Malik Willis than I am on Will Levis. Let's just say. For my Titans bags, because I have a bunch of Treylon Burks, and shout out Trev, one of our content guys here at Spike Week. Chig was his guy. I think I would want Malik Willis. Levis.
I don't think Titans fans are going to want
terrible.
Titans fans are going to want to see Levis, and if you're already out of it, you kind of want to see what you have in them.
But they
invested draft capital in him.
They invested in Malik Willis too.
But they hate him. Difference? They hate him though. They already decided they're.
Wait till they see Will Levis play. They're gonna fucking hate him real fast.
Well, that's because the Titans refuse to blow this thing up.
I know.
That's this is where problem. That's the problem. That's where they should be, is blowing this thing up, rebuilding this entire team, trading Derrick Henry, not drafting quarterback after quarterback. But they're the Tennessee Titans. They refuse to lose. So. Yeah, it's just they're putting themselves in purgatory.
I totally agree. Next one, Packers, Falcons. We don't got to talk about this one too much because everyone has dunked on Arthur Smith and the Falcons all week. I don't think this is a great bounce back spot for Drake London, given what we saw in week 1. Arthur Smith sacrificed Drake London to the island of JC Horn in week 1. And, that's not how I would coach the game. Personally, I would like to move my best players around and just get them the ball. But that's not how Arthur Smith coaches. And I understand all of us in fantasy land are not happy with Arthur Smith, and I'm certainly not happy. But that's how he chose to go win week 1, and they did go win week 1. One thing I'll say about the Falcons is the defense is very, very much improved. Their roster is real good. If you go look down that roster, it's very good. Desmond Ridder is obviously a huge question mark, and Arthur Smith is a bit of a question mark, but they're going to win a lot of games, I think, the Falcons this year. And I actually think they're going to win this one against Green Bay. Green Bay is not very good against the run. And you know what Arthur Smith wants to do. It's probably not going to be a good thing with old Bijan and Algier running it down your throat. But I also think it's probably not a great bounce back spot for London and Pitts, because I think he's just going to see the Packers run defense weakness and just continue to pound Bijan and Algier, and probably sacrifice Drake London again to the Jair Alexander Island, which is what's going to happen. Jair is going to go cover Drake London. So I wouldn't be really hopeful for Drake London just yet, but I would feel still pretty good about both Algier and Bijan. Dogs are also excited about the run game for the Falcons.
You know that London's catching a touchdown now that you said that.
Oh, 100%. Is it a hot take to say JC Horn is better than Jair Alexander? I think JC Horn is like super duper elite, and Jair is good, still very good, not totally amazing. So I wouldn't be surprised. I think Pitts. I'll bet a Pitts touchdown this week.
Okay,
How about that one?
I'll throw Pitts on something. I'll figure something out for Pitts.
Also, regression season for old Jordan Love. I think the Bears defense is terrible. The Bears are terrible. And Jordan Love did look very good. And I would be very hopeful for, Dilly. What a stupid fake name that is. Dilly says, JC Horn is hurt. Yeah, obviously we'll get to the Panthers later, but the JC Horn is hurt, but he was not hurt in week one. And they just sent Drake London out to, it was like Revis Island. They just said, London, you go out to this really good corner. We're never even going to look at you. We're going to let Bijan and Algier do everything. But I think the Falcons, I know it's gross. I know London and Pitts feel really gross, but I think the Falcons are going to be very good. And I do think that it's still, it's 4.5 guys. Bijan and Algier are basically a split, so that's a concern for Bijan, but really good for Algier. And then Pitts and London with a sprinkle of Mac Hollins. So you're going to get good games out of all these guys over the course of the season. When they don't have a good game, you're going to get nothing. So that sucks. Really, like that is really bad at the draft cost for some of these guys. But you're going to get good games.
I do want to see them get pushed eventually too. Like, I just want to see what that looks like for that team. Maybe they need to see that too. Maybe, I'm not saying that Arthur Smith's going to change his coaching style, but if they get pushed and they can kind of keep up, maybe that's something that they need to have happen for that offense.
Mm-hmm. I agree. They have a good defense, and they played the Panthers' offense is a joke, honestly. Like I thought Bryce Young actually looked pretty good. Just no one ever got open for him.
Well, you also lose both of your quote unquote starting wide receivers before, like, which we all saw freaking coming a mile away. Who didn't see the Chark and Thielen injuries for week one? It just felt so organic.
Yeah, and Mingo's not ready to be the guy, and Visca we know is not the guy, and so Hayden Hurst caught a touchdown, so feel okay about him, being the accumulator. That he's not good, but he's probably going to get 6 or 7 targets every week on a bad offense because they don't have any other option. So Colts Texans, just a quick RIP to my guy Evan Hull. We made it a few snaps into week one before he got hurt. He's on IR. Supposedly, I was hopeful because after the game he said that he didn't think it was a big deal, his injury. And then they put him on IR today. So clearly it's a little bigger deal than he thought. But Anthony Richardson, of course, looked probably a lot better than most people thought, especially as a passer. It was great. He was like, I don't remember where it was. I know he was like 6 for his first 7 and then like 12 for his first 15 or something like that. And it was really good to see Twitter dunking, doing some fun dunking on people that were like, oh, all the fantasy bros told you that he couldn't complete a pass ever. And he's, completing 90% of his passes. But the running died down in the second half a little bit for AR. He also got dinged up, but he's supposedly okay. But this is a pretty good match-up. So I think
you want to talk about a quarterback that needs to learn how to slide and all kinds of stuff. This dude is going to get hurt. Like 100%. He already got hurt week one. He has the knee bruise, but you talk about Josh Allen and stuff and not sliding. AR is over there trying to plant people into the ground, and you're in the NFL. You're in the NFL. This is not college. These dudes are big. They are going to win that battle more than you win that battle.
I agree. I don't want to talk too much about Colts Texans.
It's going to be gross.
Really, really gross game. But sometimes the gross games are fun. Fun little, like from a DFS perspective. And if you want to bet over 40, I don't think that's crazy. It's not too great. The Colts defense is a fucking abomination. So I think it's an okay bounce back spot for Nico. Damian Pierce feels a little sketchy. He seeded a lot. Like, what a great lesson in the preseason usage being flawed is Damian Pierce. He ran 2 more routes than Mike Boone in week one. Mike Boone was somebody people weren't even sure if he was going to make the team. And Mike Boone ran 19 routes and Damian Pierce ran, I think 21, might have been 23, but it was somewhere right. Basically, Mike Boone ran the same amount of routes as Damian Pierce did. And it's like, we love to get really excited about the preseason usage, and sometimes it isn't real. And sometimes we also expect, Devin Singletary is the next man up. And guess what? Devin Singletary is like the 2.5 with Mike Boone. And I do think Nico Collins looked good. If CJ Stroud, the Ravens defense really got after the Texans, but I feel like Nico Collins you should be fairly bullish for. And also Michael Pittman looked good in week 1. Josh Downs too, another one. Bears Bucks, interesting game. Baker, obviously we talked about earlier. Do you have any thoughts on the Bears first game, Fields and all of that? Because they obviously look terrible, but this does feel like a decent bounce back spot for Fields, DJ Moore.
I think the offense is going to be fine for fantasy. To your point, their defense is just bad. So I think that they're going to be in enough shootouts all year. Fields is still running a bit. DJ Moore is going to be fine. He's going to have his 0 to 4 point games, but I think overall you're fine with this offense. You can play Khalil Herbert, you can play Rashawn Johnson, right? I'm still very not into Donta Foreman at the moment, but I think the other two backs have some value. They should be fine against the Bucks this week. This is probably the game that you should probably hammer the over on. 41.5. I'm probably going to go bet that after we get off the show.
I agree. I like it. I thought Baker, look, I'm not a Baker guy, but I thought he looked fine in week 1, and they obviously have weapons. Evans, Godwin, Trey Palmer caught a touchdown. I think Cade Otton is fine. Rashad White and Sean Tucker, and they played Chase Edmonds for a lot over Sean Tucker, but I think Sean Tucker will take over that RB2 job. And the Bears defense is really, really bad. I mean, Jordan Love without Christian Watson and then no Aaron Jones in the fourth quarter, I hung 40 on them or something like that, like effortlessly 40. Jordan Love threw 26 passes and threw for like 250 and 4. And Aaron Jones obviously just straight hung dong on the Bears defense. I think the Bucs defense held the Vikings in check in on the scoreboard, but not like from a production standpoint. They should have scored. The Vikings should have won that game, and B, they probably should have scored 40. But Kirk took some sacks in the red zone. They had some drops in the red zone. It wasn't good for the Vikings in terms of finishing drives. I think Fields, in particular Fields, DJ Moore bounces back here pretty good. So if you drafted that stack praying for the upside, I wouldn't write it off just yet. Let's see how they go against the Bucs on Sunday. Let's not talk too much about Raiders Bills, because we both just think the Bills
smash.
I mean, what a bounce back spot, man. Like Jets on prime time, lay an egg, and then you get the Raiders defense, who Russ just straight cooked up in the first half. I know he didn't do shit at all in the second half, but the Broncos offense is terrible. They don't have any weapons especially without Judy, and Dulcich got hurt. I think the Bills kind of just lay the smack down here, especially no Jacoby Myers. We assume no Jacoby Myers. Jimmy G did play well in that game, but
got hurt twice too. And that's the concern about Jimmy G. Does he even make it through this game? Is always like the concern with him. So that dude is not making it through the whole season.
No. I agree. Chiefs Jaguars, the cream of the crop of week 1. Super, super excited for this one. Wheels up on everybody. If you got all these guys in your best ball portfolio, feel good. I will say it was interesting because Tank Bigsby was almost completely splitting with Travis Etienne for most of the first half, and then he went totally away in the second half. And Travis Etienne played like 75% of snaps. I'm trying to cite it from memory. I apologize if I'm not getting it exactly right, but somewhere in that ballpark, Etienne kind of took over in the second half. So I'd feel really good about that. I would expect that he should continue that in a big shootout game because the reason why he did that, my guess, is that it was a lot closer than they hoped it would be. They were mixing and matching him and Tank in the first half because it was like, it's the Colts. We're gonna run these guys in, and then they were losing to the Colts, and so they said, let's maybe just run with our best players. Calvin Ridley is the big highlight from this game to me. If your take in the offseason was, we just don't know, he hasn't played in 2 years, how could you possibly take him at the 2-3 turn when you don't know if he's any good, and he hasn't played in such a long time and he's in a new offense. I'm not saying your premise was wrong, but it's time to hold that L already. I think, in my just my opinion, he's a smash.
He's the guy.
Will he stay healthy?
He's the guy.
I don't know if we can never project those things over will he smash in week 17? I don't know. Will he smash all year? Will he stay healthy? I don't know. He was targeted on something like 40% of first reads from Trevor Lawrence. He was open all day. Go watch the game. He's a smash. He's better. Like CeeDee Lamb went at the 1-2 turn. Calvin Ridley's a better fantasy player than CeeDee Lamb is. So it just is what it is.
Yeah, I agree. And doesn't mean that this will be another Calvin Ridley week, but the dude is an absolute baller. This could actually be the Christian Kirk week.
Go Twitter search some like Calvin Ridley highlights. I feel bad for those Colts corner. He was like, I'm trying to think of some of the really, like Diggs is actually a really good route runner, so probably a good comp. Like sometimes Diggs puts these dudes on skates so bad with like these crazy routes. Like he just fucks with guys. Calvin Ridley he was feeling himself so much that he was just like dancing around during his routes. And then like he would just put on the brakes. The corner would fall down. Literally that happened during the game. The corner fell down when he put on the brakes.
Yep.
And he's just wide open. He looks awesome. And he's very clearly the alpha for the Jags. So if you have Calvin Ridley on your fantasy team or on your best ball teams, I would feel good. And certainly I would feel good in this monster shootout of a game. Next one, Ravens Bengals.
10%, and I wish I had more.
Yep, same. I actually was one of those guys who was like, man, Ridley really in the third round, blah blah blah. And then eventually I was just like, don't do this. You don't want to do this. You don't want to go in with 2% Calvin Ridley. Like don't do that to yourself. Like he can win you millions of dollars. Just take the plunge, get at least up to with the field. Let's hit some of these.
Sorry, he's the one I made the mistake with because I don't know if you remember having the conversation early in best ball season. I talked to you about the Jags because you were real light and I was pretty heavy overweight at that point in time.
Yeah.
But as Ridley rose up, I started not taking him when he ended up in that second round. At the end of that second round, I was kind of fading him because I was like, I already drafted a ton of Ridley in the third round. And when I believed in him that much, I should have been like, yeah, great. I got the third, fourth round Ridley early, but I might as well get the second round Ridley as well. Like, I don't think it really
now matters. You're just getting different combinations of players with him.
And I didn't do it. And we're going to make these mistakes throughout the years, but like, I always try to make sure that I look at him and see what was the mistake. And I thought that before the game too. I was like, I think I messed this Ridley thing up.
Yep. I felt that way 100%. I tried to rectify it. I was the guy buying the top. I was buying Ridley at the 2-3 turn because I realized the error of my ways. And I'm not trying to, we'll probably get a YouTube comment that says you're overreacting to week 1 on Calvin Ridley, but that's how I felt 2 weeks ago. So I'm fine. If he fails the rest of the way, so be it. I'll hold that L, but I'm pretty confident in Calvin Ridley's role, at least, and his fantasy standing here moving forward. I don't want to touch too much on Giants Cardinals. Good bounce back spot for the Giants. Yeah. Gross game. Really gross game. I mean, you see 39.5 total, and the Giants are 6-point favorites on the road. Nothing super special there. Saquon should be a pretty good Saquon spot, but Ravens Bengals, I am pretty excited for. I'll definitely be watching that one in particular because I want to see how Lamar and Burrow. Frankly,
and
I want to see
and the entire Bengals offense bounce back.
Both of these are two bounce back spots, and so a lot of things all converging together. Both offenses underperformed, particularly from a fantasy perspective in week 1. I thought Zay Flowers was awesome, and that was about the only positive from both of these two teams. From a like performance perspective, I know Justice Hill we're excited for, and he was good in week 1 in the fantasy box score, but he had 8 carries for 9 yards. He wasn't like it wasn't like he was awesome, in real life. But I think this game is just something we really want to watch for, fantasy bounce back. If neither of these, if this game is like 13-10 and both of these offenses struggle again, it's still only going to be 2 weeks, but I think it will be okay to be like, oh man, like there were a lot of guys we could take in the first 3 rounds, and both of these teams had a bunch of dudes that we were drafting there. Should we have drafted somebody else? I think we'll be talking about that next Monday if this game doesn't produce at least a little bit of fantasy goodness.
Just check the weather on the game too, because I was like, I know there's some stuff going around with the weather up here for the week and the weekend. But in Cincinnati on Sunday, it is going to be 77 degrees and like partly cloudy.
There we go. Thank God.
Is there a better, weather for a football game? I mean, maybe a few degrees colder, but I mean, we're getting good weather for that game. I think everybody bounces back, and let's hope T. Higgins doesn't zero out again.
Yeah. This is a great T and Chase spot, in my opinion. So we'll see.
This might be a great DF. So as we were going through the games, I was like looking at some of these teams, but this might be a great Burrow double stack game because it'll be probably really low owned with some cheap pieces you can bring. It might be the play.
I will just say Zay Flowers, prospect bros who were like, he wasn't that good of a prospect. He was just doing it at Boston College. He looks pretty good. He was the alpha in that offense by far. Like,
thank God I flipped that switch on him, because I wasn't in the beginning. I think we talked about this last night. I was so heavy Bateman, so heavy. Thank God I flipped that switch.
I'm still sort of mad at myself because I mean I love Bateman in college too. So I'm not trying to say that it was like I dislike Bateman and loved Zay, but like as a college bro, a college DFS bro, like Zay Flowers, every time he was on a college football DFS slate was like literally the stone lock of all locks. And like, do you watch every BC game? And he was unreal. He was literally unreal. He was like, you've heard me talk about like Tutu and how good Tutu was in college. He was Tutu on steroids. He was unstoppable in the like, I don't care if he's playing Clemson. I don't care who he's playing. He was going to catch 8 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just what he did. And it wasn't like fluky college bullshit. It was like, no, they threw for 212 yards and he had 150 of them. Like, he was the whole offense. And he was so good in college. And I understand all the pushback from the prospect community or whatever on his size and, where he came from and kind of a little bit of a later breakout, blah, blah, blah. But I was just like, this dude's good. I believed that he was good. And I was just naturally like, oh my God, Rashad Bateman's going after him in early parts of drafts. And it shouldn't deter you from a good pick just because another guy is a good pick 2 rounds later. And that's a trap that a lot of people fall into that I personally try to steer people away from. And I fell into it at the beginning of draft season, being like, well, I can get Bateman in round 9. Why would I take Zay in round 7? And it was like, why don't you just take both, dummy? If they're both good picks, take both.
I started to take both of them as well.
All right. Quick hot, hit these down the stretch here. 49ers, Rams.
Rams get embarrassed this week.
I love all my Rams. I love shout out to Kyron and Puka and Tutu, but this is not the week, boys.
Nope.
This is not the week. 49ers by $1 billion, right? Like,
they're gonna the Rams are gonna inverse what they did last week. Jets Cowboys. I wish I got that opening line to
Same.
hit the under on 45.5. The fact that it's already 39.5 tells you all you need to know. This game is not going to be a good fantasy game.
Nope. Play the Cowboys defense in DFS.
Yeah.
Commanders Broncos is an interesting one. Holding all of my Howl bags. Not a great game. Obviously, you see 38.5 total, and they're underdogs. But the Broncos defense was really bad last week. I know they only gave up 17 to the Raiders, but that was mostly because the game was both sides were just like dinking and dunking the whole game. Jimmy G threw 26 passes for like 280 yards or something like that. They were really, really efficient. I think it was shout out Reeves, Rich Rebar said the Raiders were the only team that got a first down on every possession that they had the entire game. I'm not sure the Broncos defense is very good. We're assuming that they're good because they've been good historically. They do have Patrick Surtain, but they traded Bradley Chubb. I don't know. I don't know that the Broncos
nasty, but the rest might be bad. I think I'm betting the over on this game.
I kind of like the over there as well. Commanders defense was okay, not amazing. So I wouldn't feel too bad about my assets in that game. It's not perfect, but I think there'll be a little bit of fantasy production there. Then we get to the Sunday, Monday night games, Dolphins, Patriots. Certainly a letdown, not a letdown spot, but kind of a letdown spot for the Dolphins. They're not going to do what they did in week 1 against the Patriots in New England. But what are you thinking about this kind of spot for both of these two teams?
Wait, is this a double Monday night game?
Yeah, there's 2 Monday night games. Yeah,
they're doing that week 2, not week 1. Wasn't that always week 1 before? Whatever, doesn't matter.
It was, yeah.
Patriots are going to get smashed by one of these wide receivers. This is just classic Patriots.
Waddle time, right?
Probably Waddle. Yeah. They probably bracket Hill. I would assume that's what they do. So I think it's probably Jalen Waddle week. So that's what I would be looking at there. And I'm interested to see what the Patriots do in the passing game again. I think there's an overreaction to Ramondre, by the way. Like
his role was great, right?
What did he do that we didn't think he was going to do? We knew he wasn't going to get the workload that he got last year. It didn't matter if they brought in Zeke or somebody else. They were never going to try to make him a workhorse like they did. Like they had to last year. They had no other option. So I don't understand this Ramondre FUD that's going on at all. He was what we thought he was. So what the fuck? Like, I don't know. Like that was crazy to me reading through a bunch of tweets today. I find that ridiculous. Saints Panthers could be interesting. I don't know.
No,
I don't know where I am with them.
No JC Horn for the Panthers, as you mentioned before. The island of JC Horn. I was a little disappointed with the Saints. I have quite a bit of Saints in best ball just because they have a really good schedule over the course of the whole season. You get the Derek Carr theoretical upgrade at quarterback. I don't know. This game just feels really gross. I'm much more excited about the other game, the other Monday night game.
The
Panthers
both
offense.
Suck. Why are we doing these 2 Monday night games?
Honestly, the Dolphins Patriots is not amazing either. Thank God at least the Dolphins are playing, but all these games are really quite bad. But I really don't have a lot of takes from the Saints Panthers. The Panthers offense was putrid. I do think that we have a like 60-40 split on Miles Sanders, Chuba Hubbard. And this is not a good spot for those guys. This is not a good spot for the it would be a better spot for the passing game, but it's not an amazing spot. And God knows their passing game is horrible. I like the Saints, honestly, especially without JC Horn. I like the Saints in this game. And I think it's so if you play Jamal Williams, hoping 90% of snaps, Jamal Williams week 1, this is a better time to play Jamal Williams than last week. I'd be a little bit more hopeful for that. But other than that, no real, honestly, this game is just like, whatever. We'll see. We'll see what happens. The next one, last one to close out the show. Man, I wanted to be excited about the Steelers like everybody else was with all the preseason bullshit, but I couldn't quite get there. And they did what we thought. Now, the 49ers defense is awesome. It's a similar thing to what we talked about with the Bills earlier at the top of the show. I can write off a bad performance against the 49ers defense, but the Steelers lose Deontay Johnson, and say whatever you want about him. He is a integral part of their offense because he gets open. You need that. Now I love Calvin Austin. You know me, that's one of my guys, but I mean, you can't replace Deontay Johnson with Calvin Austin, and now Allen Robinson's going to run every route, which is certainly not ideal. The Browns defense did look really good, despite, it being a little bit of weather aided in week 1 against the Bengals. I don't know. Deshaun Watson looked fucking terrible again. I thought we were supposed to see a better Deshaun Watson this year. I thought the whole thing was he couldn't practice with the team. He couldn't enter the building last year for 12 weeks. Well, he was there all summer, and guess what? He still looked like shit. So I don't know. This game is also very gross, but I do like the Browns.
I am glad we have football back. And I don't want to complain about having games, but God, give us a better 2-game.
Yo, who the fuck picked these games?
And I know they played on primetime last week, but how are we not putting Chiefs-Jags in a primetime spot? Everyone wants to watch that game.
Chiefs-Jags, like think of some of these games now. Jets-Cowboys turned out to be terrible, but that would be better.
Ravens, that would have been a better game. I would.
Why the fuck are Ravens-Bengals not on? We have 2 Monday night games, and Ravens-Bengals is not one of them. That's the best 2 teams, in terms, like you said, Chiefs-Jags and Ravens-Bengals. That's the best matchups of the week, and neither of them are on a doubleheader on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even rather have that Lions-Seahawks game in a primetime spot to watch. There's so many other games I'd rather watch, but I have one question before we get out of here. Because you were fading the elite quarterbacks, and I'm not trying to dunk on you, I'm just legitimately curious. What was your Rodgers exposure? Because to me, Rodgers was only, so you were 0%. Okay. I'm technically 0%. I have him on 2 Best Ball Mania teams altogether.
He's on a couple auto drafts, my intent was 0.
Yeah, my intent was also 0 because I just didn't think he fit any builds. Even though I was taking Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, he never really fit my
Looks like Rob froze. He never really fit. That is true. He definitely never fit. I will close that out with the fact that
2 teams.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm back.
Okay, you're back. I wasn't sure if it was me. I always get really skittish because my internet goes kind of up and down here in the basement. But to your point, I know at least I missed. They might have got you. This is good. That's really funny.
What was the last thing you heard me say? I'll finish the point, whatever it was.
Yeah. He never. For me, I heard he never really fit. ...
He never really fit any build. That I was doing, or any team, because I was doing elite quarterback. He never really made sense with them. He never really made sense with some of my 3 quarterback builds, even though I was drafting some Jets, obviously Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. So from best ball perspective, it was a sigh of relief because I just don't have him on teams for the most part.
Yep. Obviously it's not great because I have a lot of Breece Hall and I have a lot of Garrett Wilson. And at the end of the day, the thesis was that Aaron Rodgers was going to make them better. Not Zach Wilson, but also the thesis was Aaron Rodgers is making those guys better. He's not necessarily a good fantasy asset, and he wasn't last year in Green Bay. If he doesn't throw, his MVP seasons where he just goes fuck you to everybody and throws 50 touchdowns and they never run at the goal line, he's really not very good for fantasy. He doesn't run anymore. They play the slowest. His offenses play the slowest pace in the league. It's goddamn insufferable to watch. It's great on primetime because that shit is over in 2 hours. Because every Aaron Rodgers snap is, it's 0. You're like, is that delay a game? Is that delay a game? No, but he gets it off right before delay a game. But yeah, he's just not a so same thing with the Rams to close. These are the types of quarterbacks I don't draft. I drafted some, very little, but some of the Bucs wide receivers. I can't help myself with Chris Godwin. But I'd never drafted Tom Brady. This year, I drafted Rams like it's going out of style. I have so much Kyron,
Stafford,
Puka, Tutu, but I literally never drafted Stafford. I drafted tons of Brees and Garrett Wilson, but I never drafted Aaron Rodgers. And I think that sometimes, I'm not saying to the folks in the chat because they're on this shit, but that's the difference in, kind of the casual brain to the best ball brain is like, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have to be a good fantasy pick for those guys to play. Actually, we might actually prefer him to just be a point guard. Let him and Stafford, right, and old school Brady and Derek Carr. I have a little bit more Derek Carr, but let those guys be point guards. Let them be John Stockton. They're going to score 16 fantasy points a week. Who gives a shit? But they're going to get the ball to your guys, and they're going to score fantasy points, and they're going to make the offense good.
Right.
So that's all that matters.
Yeah, I agree.
That's going to do it for us here on our Tuesday night week 2 preview on Spike Week Sickos. We'll be back again Mondays and Tuesdays for sure every single week at 7 p.m. Eastern, and we'll get you guys, I promise, a updated schedule here pretty soon with NBA is coming and NFL in season will be here. NFL in season's already here on DraftKings, but it will be here very quickly on Underdog, Drafters, and playoff best balls coming. MLB playoff best ball is already here. We're going to get you covered with all of that stuff very, very shortly, but forgive us. Please forgive us. It's been a long grind of a summer. We're going to take the first 2 weeks and just do a couple shows a week. But starting in the next couple weeks, we'll have you covered with all of that kind of stuff. We love you guys. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Enjoy week 2.
Spooky season. It's spooky season. Come join me and watch some ghost stories at 9:00 tonight.
I agree.
Hour or so.
I totally agree with that. Hometown Ghost Stories. Go check out Hometown Ghost Stories on YouTube. And Rob and I will see you guys on next Monday. Peace. Have a good night.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.